Hi, folks. I'm going to take this opportunity to talk to you a little bit more about your profile project and how to go about crafting it. Again, you don't have to take this advice verbatim. You can organize your profile project differently. These are just some general guidelines that I personally would use if I were to go about creating a profile. So again, if you recall from my announcements, I extended the due date for the first draft of the profile project to April the 11th, which gives you a bit of time to sit with this and create something that you're really invested in. To that end as well, remember that your transcription is not due until March the 28th, which gives you another week to really go about the interview process and the transcribing process. If you have had difficulty making those arrangements, given the situation that we're currently in with COVID-19 and distance learning. Okay, so let's go. I'll go through these guidelines. And then in a follow-up video or a couple of follow-up videos, I will guide you through some of the samples that we have on Blackboard as well to kind of give you additional insight into what your profile may look like and talking to you about what students have done in the past and so forth. So your first couple of paragraphs, you should identify what you're investigating and why it's important to you. In other words, why are you invested in this particular investigation? What do you want to know? What's your passion? What's driving you with this? And of what interest may it be to your audience, right? How are you going to hook your audience into this? How may they be? How may they be invested in this as well? Why may they be interested in it? And again, think about to whom you may be writing, right? I mean, I'm going to be your primary reader for this particular essay, but I may not be the person to whom it's addressed. So think about to whom you are addressing, okay, this particular profile, right? How do you feel that they're going to be hooked into it, right? So think about that. Who are you interviewing and what expertise do they have in the area you're investigating, right? So, in other words, why did you choose this particular person? What is this particular person's story as it relates to what you're investigating, right? I mean, were they there? Do they have firsthand knowledge of what it is you're investigating? If you're investigating a particular event, were they closer to the event per se than you are? If it's an object that you're looking at, like for instance in one of the samples, the profiler, she investigates her uncle's paintings, so obviously she interviews her uncle, so because he created the paintings. So is it somebody with a relationship to a particular object? Is it somebody with some kind of inside knowledge? Like, for instance, if you're talking to somebody in a particular career field that interests you, why are you interested? Why is this particular person qualified, right? What is that person's expertise? What is that person's ethos, right? That would qualify them to share this information with you. And then also, what is your relationship with this person? Why do you trust this person, and why should your reader then trust this person, right? Okay. So just as if you were watching an investigative report on TV, right? If you're watching something on video or YouTube or what have you, right? You have the benefit of the visual, right? So you can see the person, you can see the person's facial expression, you can see their movements and so forth, their gestures. You can gather particular information from the tone of their voice and so forth. On paper, you don't have that, or on virtual paper, you don't have that. So spend some time, a paragraph or so, describing the person. Again, in terms of physical detail, in terms of how the person speaks, in terms of how the person carries themselves, and so on and so forth. You can also include images. In fact, I would encourage you to do so. But in so doing, talk about the significance of what's in the image. Anytime you include an image in an essay, you treat that like any other piece of evidence. In other words, it's not enough just to include an image, but you have to talk about the meaning, the significance with regard to the image as it applies to what you are writing. So keep that in mind as well. As I say here, imagine describing them so that a person never having seen them could pick them out of a crowd just based on your description. Okay, this is important because the vast majority of the people who could potentially see this, even if it was on your folio and so forth, right, wouldn't have seen this person. Okay, now number 3 in this list is very important. This is the crux of the crafting of the profile. So read through your transcription and pick out quotes most significant to your investigation and include these in the retelling of the interview. So you are not going to include your entire transcription verbatim for a number of reasons. One, it's incredibly tedious. And two, the profile is not concerned with extraneous information. The profile is streamlined, right? The profile is searching after, answers to specific questions, a specific line of investigation. So you're only going to include the elements of your transcription that directly relate to that. And again, you're not just going to, stick those in there and not say anything about them. You're going to address the significance of what is being said. In other words, if you feel that a particular statement, right, is applicable to what you're talking about in your profile, you of course want to include that statement, but then you want to talk about why and how it's important. What are you getting out of that statement, right? You want to spell it out for your audience. You want to connect the dots. This is where your genius as an essayist comes into play, right? Because you're talking about meaning, significance, and you're making that apparent. You're making that real, if you will, for your reader, for your audience, okay? So you want this narration of the interview ultimately to go on for around 3 pages, okay? Again, we're not talking about writing mega treatises here. We're talking about 3 to 5 page essays, so roundabout 5-page essays. So about 3 pages of the discussion of the interview, okay? Then following that, you want to round out the essay with about a page of reflection. So some of the things that you want to take into account here, what are the big takeaways from the interview? What did you personally get out of it, right? And as such, has your perspective changed at all? Your perspective about your initial question, right? Your perspective about the person whom you interviewed, the perspective about yourself as it relates to this question, right? So, in other words, you're taking it all in and you are talking about sort of what comes next potentially. How are you going to then deal with the information that you've gotten? What does the information that you've gotten mean to you personally, right? So this is all well and good. Also, as I mentioned in the last video and as I mentioned in class prior to spring break, don't worry so much if the interview has taken on a life of its own, if it goes in an unexpected or multiple unexpected directions, right? This is actually good. If you discover stuff that you were not anticipating, that's great. Write about that and write about the effects of the unanticipated information, right? Because you may uncover something that you didn't know that you even were interested in, right? As I said previously in class 2, for a lot of you, this is the first opportunity, particularly if you're talking to family members, that they may talk to you as one adult to another, right? Because it may be a situation where you've asked about this particular situation in the past, right? You've asked about this particular course of events in the past, and maybe somebody said, well, I'll talk to you about that when you're older. Well, now, you're young adults, many of you, and this may be an opportunity for the person whom you're interviewing to see you as an adult, and maybe really delve into some important issues with you for the first time. So really take this opportunity to really make the best of this, and particularly if you're interviewing somebody older, this could become something that's very valuable to you in the future, right? Because the profile in itself becomes an artifact, right, that you can share with others potentially, right? And it becomes a representation of your relationship or your interaction with that particular person. So it can become a very valuable asset to you later on. And particularly, in this time where we're isolated in many ways, this can be a way of bridging that isolation. Again, as I said before too, if you interviewed somebody whose first language is not English, that's perfectly fine. You can include some Spanish or other languages. In fact, I've had students interview people whose first languages are Asian languages and other things, as other language groups as well. That's fine, but just make sure that either by way of context or by way of translation that you provide, that the meaning of what they're saying is clear. Okay. All right. I am going to sign off now. I appreciate your time and attention, and I will be putting up more videos as the weeks go on, or the days and weeks go on. All right. Thank you very much.